And we are back. Yes, better than ever. We have an amazing guest today. She has close ties to the DMV area as her upbringing started off and remained in Maryland. She is a Bowie State University graduate. Yes, guys, she is a HBCU alum with a bachelor's in business administration. She is a Harvard SVMP alum, an HBCU All-Star, and has had previous experiences at OneSource Inc., Steward Partners Global Advisory, Amazon, 2U, and now works for Microsoft in the Seattle area. Not to mention, and we talk about this all the time, a strong Microsoft advocate. Just when it doesn't get any better than that, she's an inspirer, a motivator, a change maker. She wants to change the world. That's what she tells everyone else, and she tells herself. She created the Destiny's Foundation, which plans to mentor students, providing them with amazing opportunities and introducing them to the world of tech. Please give a warm welcome to Shanell Powell or Shanell Power. She goes by either or. Welcome to the show, Shanell.
Thank you so much, George. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you also, Stefan, for bringing me on to your podcast and being a part of the energy that is inspiring and encouraging and enlightening so many people across the nation about opportunities in different industries and bringing them knowledge that's going to be completely useful as they navigate life and career. So thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. And let's hop in. What's going on?
Listen, we're good. We're fine. What's going on with you on episode 21 of the Dream Shakers podcast? We got to spice it up. Like, tell us about that upbringing. What was it growing up in that DMV area, Maryland? You know, they say you guys were created different. So how was that upbringing? Tell us more.
It was beautiful. So I am the youngest of 3 children. I went to the same college my siblings went to. It was probably 30 minutes away from my childhood home, 15 minutes away from my grandma's house. So I would leave in the middle of the day and go have dinner or go have lunch with her. And I'd come back to class and I was full and happy and whole. I will say one of the biggest things about, growing up in Maryland in particular, but in the whole DMV area, is just the opportunity to see yourself outside of yourself and to see people who look like you achieving phenomenal things and knowing the potential of all the things that you could be in this world and not having to leave your home in order to accomplish that. So that's one of the biggest things now in my life as I live in Seattle, Washington, that I realized I didn't know how powerful that was until I didn't have it around me and surrounded by me every single day of my life. So it was an amazing upbringing. I saw positive examples of who I could be. And that showed me working in tech, like moving away from home, like I was going to be okay.
You had these experiences in the DMV area, and they really shaped you. They molded you. They made you into the person that you are today. And we know from doing some background research, from doing some digging, that you took TV production classes, right? And that you produced morning news. So talk to us about your passion for media.
So when I was in high school, I met a teacher by the name of Miss Audrey Thorne, and she had a very straightforward personality. And I would walk by her classroom and I saw these big media cameras that I'd only seen on TV about people who were news anchors or who were producing the news. And I've always wanted, or I love gadgets. Like I love things I could put my hands on and learn how to operate. And that started when I was a little girl. My mom gave me a camera with SpongeBob on it, you know. So that type of energy like stayed with me until I went to high school, met this teacher, and then when I saw the cameras, I was like, oh, like what is this class called? TV production. So I ended up being in TV production for about 2 or 3 years. I joined the broadcast club in high school, and it was a way that I could stay busy and learn about an area in which I aspired to be in. One of the things that I did was I did host the morning news at Parkdale High School in Maryland. And I learned how to produce content from those experiences. So when I transitioned to college, I had an opportunity to double major, but I've only graduated with my degree in business administration. They wanted me to stay longer, and I was like, absolutely not. So every year that I was in college, I was taking 18 course credits. 18, okay? Simultaneously, I worked part-time jobs and I stayed with an internship. I believe that a few of them were read off. I did 8 internships while I was in college. I don't know how I was sustained. I don't know how I worked I had like 18 credits to take, but I did it. And I knew that it was worth it. One of my first assignments in college was to, this was during the March on Washington anniversary, and uh, the great, what is his name? The Nation of Islam. What is his name?
It was
Uh,
Farrakhan?
Ifan?
Farrakhan. Yes, yes. Farrakhan came to DC and he addressed people in Washington DC and talked about the state of the Black person in America, which I'm all the way understanding of and curious about to see other people's perspective of where Black people sit in this nation of America. And I was tasked with the responsibility to go cover that. So I went out there with a classmate and we did interviews. And one of the things that I thought was so powerful was I saw Bowie State alum there. So I had the opportunity to meet them and engage with them and hear what they were doing in the world, how they were, you know, high level executives in the government, or how they had their own organization. So that was super powerful when I was out there holding the mic and asking them questions that I thought knew I could take back to my community, I could take back to the college campus and instill within the knowledge, and knowing the power of having positive Black examples wherever you go, especially people that have gone through and traveled the same way in which you have. So that's where my energy behind media comes in. I made a declaration when I first started school. You know, my passion and whatever I put my time and my energy into will be to uplift and ensure there are positive imageries and positive examples of Black people, period. Whatever I do. So that's where it comes from, and that's how it's been sustained.
Look at you, superstar. Look at you. We see you out here in these streets. It's interesting because, and this is segueing into the next question. I fell in love with the HBCU experience when I went to Howard University's homecoming, right? And this was after I graduated Binghamton. You know, Steph and I, we went to two different schools. I went to Binghamton, he went to Hunter, but we went to PWIs. And for those who don't know, that's predominantly white institutions, right? But I've always wondered what that HBCU experience was like. And so when I went to that Howard homecoming after I graduated in the fall, I just fell in love. Like the love was different, right? Like I felt embraced. I felt like, damn, it was always those questions that were lingering around. What if? Like, what if I went to HBCU? Could you talk to us in the audience about that unique perspective of that HBCU experience and how you were able to transition into corporate settings where BIPOC presence or BIPOC presence is oftentimes not as strong.
Okay, yeah, not a problem. So when I first got into Bowie State, I started in 2014 in the fall of that year. Um, I didn't know what all it meant to be a HBCU student at the time. I knew that I was, navigating spaces and I was surrounded by, like going to a HBCU and being from Prince George's County and being from the DMV. It's like you are already, like your mindset is already fixed that you know that you'll be around Black folks who are excelling. You'll be around people who, are looking to go somewhere in life. Like that's already you don't take that for granted. Like that's already a thing that happens. That's the way it's supposed to go, right? So I was around some intelligent people, and it was one day I was in class, and I was very maybe not I was not as social or not as willing to raise my hand. And there was a young woman who came up to me after class, and she said, "Shanell, why do you always wait to get your name called on? You just need to say what's on your mind and speak up." And I was like, "Oh." She said, "Because when you say things, the room changes. When you say things, people listen. When you say things, we're able to learn. So I needed you to speak up." I was like, "Oh, you right." So since that moment, um, the moment in which I saw another Black woman seeing me in the classroom, it really shaped my ability to engage and the necessity for me to engage. And I think that that may not have been seen or appreciated or acknowledged at any other kind of institution, where people feel so comfortable to walk up to you and say, "What's going on with you? Fix it." Open your mouth and say something. Another experience after that, I was enthralled into a cohort learning experience called Scholar Studio, led by Miss Monica Turner. And in this cohort, I took classes, almost every class with the exception of one, with the same group of people. I want to say it was approximately 30 of us. And then we embarked on a journey of experiential learning. In this learning journey, we had opportunity to do a case study around a hospital that housed insane African American people. All right. So this hospital was created, excuse me, in maybe they're in mid 1800s, and it was called the Crownsville Hospital for the Negro Insane. I was saying to myself, that is highly problematic. Let's start there. The second thing is knowing that this facility was not shut down until the 21st century. And I want to say it wasn't shut down until 2004, July of 2004. So one of the things I've heard people say is that, "Oh, we're so far away from this thing. We're so far removed from, slavery or these institutions that disenfranchise our people." And I'm saying in my mind and now verbally, we are not so far away. And one of the most powerful things that I saw as we did that case study, as we walked the grounds in which many Black people lost their lives due to malpractice and medical experimentation, and more of the things that I learned as I was reading Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. I was in a space where those things were manifested. And I was in a space where those things happen to people that look like me for no reason. And as we know nowadays, as laws have changed, and if Black people were not in the house at a certain time, they would just get rallied up in police vehicles and brought to institutions like this. And in those institutions, we were not treated well. In those institutions, we were not ensured that we were looked after. Um, we had the freedom in this cohort to do deep dive learning and to actually imagine a world where we could revitalize the grounds in which so many people were done so poorly. And long story short, I worked with a group of 3 other individuals, and we worked to create this amazing plan to rebirth this space. Um, And the recommendation was to have a museum, to have a place where the people who lost their lives are recognized, a place where we could find the names of the people who lost their lives because they had unmarked graves, and make sure that we pay homage to their sacrifice, right? For us having an opportunity to go to an institution like Bowie State, to have an education just because of their sacrifice, we were able to do that. And after that, I had a chance to um, just navigate, and we joined the case competition. My group won first to second place. And shortly after, one of my now mentors and family reached out to me and said, "Hey, Shanell, this bill is being brought to the Maryland State Senate, and we want you to come and testify on behalf of this bill, to ensure that somebody of the Black African American community has something to do with what happens to this land." And I said yes. I found myself testifying on behalf of a bill as a freshman in school. And they actually revised the bill to include somebody that was of African American descent and who represented a organization that was, serious about the influence and impact of Blackness in all spaces. So I think there was a member from either the Urban League or NAACP that joined the team to determine what happens to the land. And in the HBCU space, in the HBCU access is where I learned and found my voice. And that did nothing more than trickle on campus. That did nothing more than trickle into all these other areas I found myself playing in. So completely powerful experience. But the most important thing was that somebody saw me, and somebody believed in me before I even was able to believe in myself. And that is the HBCU experience.
It's a beautiful and powerful story. Congratulations on winning that competition, and we appreciate you slash applaud you for the work that you're doing. How do you think we could spread awareness on some of these things and some of these conversations, or even the work that has been done, right? Because, you know, I had no idea that you worked on this stuff. And I'm just so amazed. I mean, I've always been amazed by you, but this even takes it to a whole nother level. So how do you think we can spread more awareness to this? And at what point do you think at these corporate firms, at these corporations, we can start to have these difficult conversations that these people tried to avoid? Because it took COVID and Black Lives Matter movement for them to start having these uncomfortable conversations slash investing in Black founders, Black communities. So like, how long do you think we could actually double up on that?
So how do we? I'll answer the first one first. So how do we find out about stories and impacts like this? We find out about it by going into community. We find out about it by asking people their stories. We found out about it by saying, okay, we have a podcast and we just want to highlight the achievements of Black folks. That's a major achievement. And for me, that was a life shifting one. So that's really the only way I can see fit. Perhaps we could host it on an online platform where we just applaud and see the impacts of Black people. That's a great idea, and I feel like it will be necessary. Um, but that's the way that it happens. But I also think that there needs to be an organic aspect, because I want to ensure that these stories are honored and represented well, and they're not exploited. So creating spaces where Black stories and Black experiences are not exploited should be our intention, whenever we want to highlight the contribution of each other. So, and then the next layer of your question was just around like, what is it going to take for corporate organizations to start these conversations, continue these conversations, and be intentional about shifting the narrative of future conversations regarding these things by doing the work. By doing the work, unless you have a lens of racial equity, unless you understand the impacts that Black people have made in this nation, you will not honor them. You will not respect them. You will see them as everybody else, but we are set apart. We are different. We are powerful. We are the only group over 400 years ago. We were bought over and shipped in bondage, enslaved, tortured, maimed, disrespected. The only group that has had continual and perpetual chattel slavery. And we've come so far to realize we are not that far. To know that the institutions and the parameters that we find ourselves in have held us tight to where we can't breathe in some cases. So with that, I don't think we need to look externally for validation. I don't think that we need to exploit ourselves for a dime. That's not what I'm about. I'm about uplifting and empowering and ensuring there are positive images of Black people wherever I go. Wherever I am, Black excellence is, and that's the period. That's the period.
So building off of that concept of Black excellence, you had, like you were mentioning, 8 internships, right? Throughout your undergraduate experience. You had a full course load on top of that. And you were able to manage all of these challenges and excel. And not only that, you were also able to take part in programs like MLT, like Harvard SVMP, like the Thurgood Marshall College Fund.
Yes.
How did you feel these programs ultimately allowed you to get to the point that you are now, and what learnings did you gain, and what perspectives did you gain from these experiences?
Oh my gosh, those programs make me light up. I know, how did they help me? Oh my, how did they not help me? So one of the things that college did was it gave me, in my broadcast journalism class, it gave me practical examples. And in my, my cohort, I had practical examples. But after a while, some of the things became theoretical. And that's not really how I learned. I learned through practice and I learned through activation. One of the major things, and I started off with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, so I'll start there. And they are a nonprofit organization that supports 47 publicly funded historically Black colleges and universities across this nation. One of the most powerful organizations I've ever had the chance to work or engage with, in a space where they saw me also and they propelled me. In 2015, I was a sophomore in school. I had a chance to meet with a lady named Miss Martinique Thompson. And she said, "Hey, Shanell, send me over your story. I want to hear what you have to say." And I'm over here like, "What do you mean?" So I send her my story. I come up with some things, and she's like, "Wow, we want you to speak at our annual gala." And I'm like, "What? Okay, cool." And then I get a call from the chief operations officer at the time, Scott Lilly. Scott's like, "Shanell, we loved your story. We're excited for you to have, space and time on the stage. I'm ready for it. I'm excited. You're going to do amazing. You're going to knock out the park." I would say 2 months later, I edited my speech. I went to, I was in DC at the time, maybe around 5,000 people of attendance. We had Roland Martin, we had Deborah Lee from BET, we had Jack Dorsey from Twitter, we had different executives at organizations like John Deere and Eli Lilly, these different organizations present, Walmart. And I was asked to be on the stage as a student speaker. And I think at the time, Wendy Williams was the host. And I think right after I spoke and shared my story and to share my experiences as to how I got to where I was at that point, V. Bozeman from Empire actually gave myself, my co-speaker, a scholarship in the name of her grandmother. And that was another pivotal point for me, because I was nervous. I had to tell myself, like, I'm not telling my story for me. I'm telling my story for you and you and you and you. And through those stories and through my experiences, I found so much power and I found so much influence that the Thurgood Marshall really gave me. And from there, I've been able to, I would say, amass around $18,000 in total scholarships from the organization from my sophomore year until I completed. So when I engaged the organization, I didn't have student loans. I was taken care of, and I applied for these scholarships, and I got to know the people working there. And I would say few years later, I went to my mentor, Scott, and I said, can I just visit you in the office? You know, I'm not too far away. I could take the train. And he was like, absolutely. So I met him in January of 2018, I believe, in the office in 2018. And I overheard a lady asking for help. She said, oh my gosh, I need help processing all these documents. And then Scott came to me and said, hey, Shanell, can you help out in the office for maybe 2 weeks so we can get this process? Absolutely, I can. And I would say after 2 months there, I said, I don't want to leave. I'm going to make this a year experience. So that's what I did. I stayed at the Thurgood Marshall College Fund for a year, interning in 3 different organizations. So that was the opportunity that I created for myself. And because of the place being so safe, because of people seeing me and investing in me, I was able to see and continue to invest in myself. But that only came through prioritization. The initial question you asked around, like, how did you manage all these things? I prioritized what was important to me. That's it. At certain points, Thurgood Marshall was important to me. But when I joined MLT was important to me. So if I had to go to Disney World to handle some business, I got to go to Disney World to handle some business, you know? I had to handle some business, you know what I mean? And these spaces respected who I was and what I was trying to accomplish. So because I was at that time, I was working with the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. They know I'm a college student and they support college students. They want me to excel. So they created a space where I could excel, but also learn, you know? So that's really what's important is prioritization. You get done whatever you want to get done. That's for everybody. You pay for whatever you want to pay for through prioritization. And that's how I made it. That's how I learned so much. But I would say the other thing is knowing what I know now and having the experiences I've had now, when I share them with people, I know that people can do it. They may not have the tolerance or the life that affords them to do these things. To have 8 internships and work simultaneously and still be active in community and do all these things. So that's why I decided to start my nonprofit. And I said, what are some key factors from an educational perspective that I can create to ensure that people understand that you should not have to work 8 internships to end up at Microsoft. But if you do, there's a way for you to get there. And these are, I would say, the core experiences I had that shaped my understanding of where my life could go and provide them with that. Networking, right? Let's get out the comfort of your own home. You know, leave your circles and navigate in different ones. Somebody says, you know, you should never be the smartest person in the room. So I'm intentional about ensuring I'm not the smartest person in the room. You know, so networking is a core piece. The other thing is believing in yourself. So how do you believe in yourself? There's a core element to healing. What caused you to not believe in yourself? How do we address that? Let's start there. In order for things to persist, in order for things to increase, there had to be a point at which that thing occurred or something happened. Somebody told you wasn't good enough. Somebody told you that you'd never be able to do it. Somebody told you that you couldn't. Somebody told you that you couldn't because they couldn't. So how in the world could you do something they couldn't do? That's just, I would say, a snippet of, you know, why I do what I do in this space is people need it and people that look like us need it. So that's why I created it.
Ooh, you dropping gems. You gotta relax. You gotta you just gotta keep going. We need you to come with it. Um, you have this distinct voice, right? And everyone that comes across paths with Shanell Powell knows this, right? You mentioned it earlier in this interview that your professor was like, you need to just get up and talk because when you talk, people listen. And that clearly showed when you gave your speech in front of Thurgood Marshall's College Fund Gala in front of 5,000 folks. Among the other things that you do, where did this voice come from? And at what point did you realize that you had this voice?
I would say the question was never, did I have a voice in my life? It was, when would I apply it? And one of the things my mom will tell you if you ever talk to her is that Shanell has always been this way. Shanell has always had something to say. And she always knew that what she had to say was powerful. For example, I had a speech the other day, and my mom was like, they had the words at the bottom of the screen when the graduates came up. And she was like, Shanell, that was so long. I knew you had something elaborate to say. I sure did, Mom. I sure did. You know, whenever I'm given space and time to share my voice, I will do it. And I'm not gonna give you the discount. I'm gonna give you the premium package every time. And you know, where did this voice come from? I think it'd be remiss of me to not mention the impact of my grandmother in my life. She was an entrepreneur. She was a leader in the community. She was um, influential in the church. Um, and it was powerful moments because seemingly she was quiet, and you never see her coming until she showed up. And when she showed up, it wasn't a game, and she did it with suave, right? And she did it with class and ease, right? And I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. Like I want to command the room like that one day. And now being in my older age, I'm able to do that. Now, I still don't believe I'll match her class and her suave. I just come out and say what I need to say. But because I saw her doing that and operating in the fullness of who she was and in the fullness of everything that she said was powerful, everything that she said was true, everything that she said was going to impact and touch somebody's life, I knew that I had that power within me as well. And she, every time that she got, like, she told me that. So that's really where I gained the motivation, but also was inspired to speak and do so unapologetically. That's where it's from.
You again have been able to pull on all of this perspective. You've been able to pull in all of this insight, and this has allowed you to become, the person that you are today, and has given you the pathway into some of these corporate spaces. So, given the fact that you've had all of this perspective, how did you know that you were going to make the switch from a place like Amazon to Microsoft, right? And what have been the key differences in the two cultures between the companies?
So when I worked in Amazon, I worked in operations. So I was working in fulfillment centers. So the first one I worked at was in Virginia. The second one I worked at was in Baltimore. One of the biggest things I learned there was that it was a lot of work, mind, body, and soul. I saw people working long hours. I saw them, not really being intentional about work-life balance. Um, and the reason why I took my second Amazon internship was to see if my first one was a fluke. So I took it and I had a better experience, But I would say the culture and the thing that I really respected from Amazon was they really lived their principles, right? So one of the things that I've been able to take into my current career, people say one of the leadership principles is think big, right? Think big. Whenever you're doing something, think big. Don't just think about how do I get this one task done. Think about the long-term strategic vision for the organization to ensure that the solution in which I'm creating is allowing us to drive toward that. Because if we're thinking small, we won't be able to get there because the vision is big. The vision is something that we don't even know if we can accomplish, but we will try our hardest to accomplish it. The other one is have a backbone, disagree, and commit. I live by that. They didn't have to coach me on that one. I said, oh, I know how to do that. I grew up in a house with a black mom. I have to have a backbone. I have to know when and when not to disagree. And I have to commit to my disagreement because I'm going to take whatever I have to take at this point in time because I already said what I needed to say. So I would say the most distinctive part was making the transition from that kind of culture to coming into Microsoft where most people that I've experienced have been very pleasant and supportive and willing to meet with me and invest in me and give with an open hand. And I would say that that is one thing that I really appreciate about the organization which I work for is that people are intentional about giving. That's the culture of Microsoft. It's a giving culture. And in my community where I grew up, it was similar. It was give, give, give. Now the difference between where I grew up, my culture and Microsoft is that they have almost an infinite amount of resources. So that amplifies and multiplies the amount of people in which you can help and support. So I've been finding unique verticals in which I can support, help, and encourage people to do exactly what they want to do in their life. So I would say like the cultures were different, but at the point in my life, I believe I needed both. Now having graduated, now having worked all those 8 jobs, I feel like I can be in a space where I can focus on doing well and showing up and advocating for the things I believe I need to advocate for, and ensuring that each initiative that I want to see done, people rally support around it. So that's what I do appreciate is the supportive culture.
Building off of that same theme, right? In your career in these professional spaces, can you talk a bit more about what it actually means to be a program manager? Because me and George are familiar with product management. We're familiar with product marketing management, but program management is a relatively new term to us, right? Coming from consulting and banking, and we'd like to know more about what are the typical day-to-day tasks that you have within in that role and how it differs from the other management verticals within tech.
Okay, so my title is business program manager, right? So in that capacity, I have the way my organization is structured. I work in the customer experience and success org within our worldwide commercial business for Microsoft. Within that, we have different leaders. So we have vice presidents and executive vice presidents. Uh, our overarching goals are to drive consumption. Our overarching goal is to sell products and services that Microsoft creates. Like that's the bottom line. And what they do is they create along with their team strategic initiatives for each year. Each fiscal year, we go through maybe 2 or 3 cycles of planning. And in those planning cycles, we determine what needs to get done, right? After we determine what needs to get done to drive those 2 areas, kind of I talked about before, how do we sell our products and how do we drive consumption, but also how do we deliver an amazing experience to our customers? That is distilled into clearly defined projects and initiatives. So I don't know if I can talk about what we sell specifically, but the things in which we sell, we have different people who lead up the things in which we sell. And underneath of there, those things need to be looked at and seen end to end, right? So like, let's say we sell a certain thing, right? You'll have a business program manager overseeing this portfolio of work of this thing we need to sell, and they will identify all the areas that need to get done. What do you have to consider when you want to sell something? How much is it going to cost? So you need to engage with finance. Who's going to actually do the work? So you need to be a part of a team that identifies profiles. Who in the organization have these skill sets and can do this work? What business stakeholders need to know about these changes that are taking place? Where are the tool dependencies, so that we can ensure that from a tooling side, we can see this work through end to end. And then I will just list one more from, are we being compliant? Are we being Microsoft compliant? So we have to bring in our legal teams to ensure that this project we're trying to sell, this thing we're selling, is actually initiated and activated and given all the resources it needs to give so that we can deliver a good customer experience, drive consumption, and ensure we are meeting our mark as an organization.
So I've known this about you since we met at Harvard SVMP, always been a go-getter, always been active in a community, and have been a mentor to many of the young Black youth out there. And you touched a bit about this all throughout in terms of how you mentored others as well as how people have mentored you. Let's segue into the Destiny's Foundation. Could you share one or two stories that have had a deep impact on you as you supported BIPOC men and women in the pursuit of their own goals, and share to the audience what the Destiny's Foundation is in its entirety?
So Destiny's Foundation is a brainchild of mine. My middle name is Destiny. So I believe that it was pretty easy for me to find out what I was going to name my nonprofit organization, slap one foundation at the end. That means I can do the work in the community, and have the community invest in these young folks in which I mentor and support. And why did I decide to start this kind of organization and opposed to any other one? One of the things that I wanted to do is that I've been in this work for 6 years. I've been seeing and identifying and coaching students, whether it be through the Thurgood Marshall College Fund, whether it be through one of my mentors calling me and saying, hey, I had this student, whether it be through a family member reaching out. You know, I've had this passion forever, and I've been doing this work. And I tell people 6 years, but it's work I've been doing my whole life. And in those 6 years, I've been able to just walk down the promenade at school, and I would just see students, and I would start talking to them and asking them about what they wanted to achieve. And what most of them said was like, oh, I need some money. What you need money for? I got books. I go into the bookstore. I can't afford it. Oh, okay. What Destiny's Foundation will do moving forward, you know, aside from our programming, is to close that gap, right? If you need to get accounting software, which can be $300, at least starting price, that's ridiculous. We got you. That's essentially what I want our organization to be able to fulfill moving forward. But I'll just mention a significant success story. I used to be the undergraduate learning assistant for economics. I believe it was macroeconomics. That was led by Professor Dr. LaTanya Brown, who has been an amazing supporter of mine throughout my time at Bowie. I was co-facilitating her class, so I had a chance to engage with students. So I remember that experience I had when I first started college, and where a girl had reached out to me and said, what are you doing? Why are you not raising your hand? Why are you not speaking up? And I said, I'm gonna do this to somebody else. I see this young woman, I'm looking at her work, A's across the board. She's turning into a tutor for the work. I'm like, she's genius. She's gonna be my mentee. I walk over to her. I say, hey, Stephanie, how you doing? And she's like, oh, I'm good, Shanell. You know, I'm just doing my work. And I was like, why do you wait to be called on? Why are you not raising your hand? You are intelligent, you are powerful, you are phenomenal. And more people need to know that you are here and what you know. And she was like, well, I don't know why. But one of the things that I noticed from that, and I was like, well, let me just show you a few things. Let me show you how I navigate, let me show you how I connect with people. And I will say, like, I met her maybe her sophomore year, and we've been very deeply connected ever since. Now she's studying for her CPA. She's had an internship at from one of my other mentors, James Thompson, who works for Alliance Bernstein. I think they're based out of New York City. And he works for that organization. And I had him come to campus, and he's been able to support the career of Stephanie. Right. And that's what it's about. It's about having that cycle of supporters who journey with you and journey with the people who journey with you, and open up doors that you may not be able to open up yet, or shed knowledge and insight that you may not have yet. So now this organization is creating unique opportunities for students at Bowie State University. And that's because what? That's because I saw this organization. I invested energy into learning more about it and engaging and creating authentic relationships with the people who are overseeing different programs and initiatives, hosting them on campus, ensuring that people at Bowie State showed up, talking to my campus leadership. I facilitated a conversation between my campus president. I'm already in this work. You know what I mean? I've been doing this. And I said that I wanted to make it more official last year. So on December 15, 2020, I decided to launch the organization on the day in which my grandfather passed. And he was in the military, and he was very like, let's get it done. Very like, just what are you waiting on? This is a man who had at least 2 jobs throughout my upbringing, so that wasn't new for me. And made sure his family was taken care of. And I want to make sure that the people in which I touch are taken care of. And I want to make sure there's an organizational structure that backs that up. So that's what Destiny's Foundation does. It creates educational experiences and support to students and individuals who are passionate about something. But we also help them realize what their passion areas are, or in our language, what their destiny is, so that they can walk in that and operate from that space.
Incredibly impactful. And it's a bit bittersweet to say this, but we are now at the last question, right? And what we have for you, I think, actually lines up very well with the way that you kind of view your interactions with others, especially students, especially mentees. So here at Dream Shakerz, we're all about paying it forward, right? So what are 3 pieces of advice you would give to your younger self?
Speak up is the first one. Speak up. You have something to say, and there's somebody that's going to listen. That's the first one. The second one is be exactly who you are. One of the most powerful things that I've been able to do, in the way that I differentiate myself, is by being myself. Be yourself. And the last thing is, the very thing that you talk yourself out of is the very thing you need to talk yourself into. Because more likely than not, that's the thing you exactly need to do. And when you start doing it, all the resources, all the money, all the connections, all those things will come because you're meant to do that thing. So that's what I will leave with people.
You gave us fire. You gave us fire today, and it's not even Sunday. It's not even God's Day today. Like, come on, Shanell. Listen, we really appreciate you, Queen, for stopping by, getting a chance to hang with us on your lovely Saturday morning. It's been a pleasure to speak with you as always. These conversations never stop. And we'll make sure to continue to push the conversations forward and continue to thread the needle. But thank you again for stopping by on this episode 21 of the Dream Shakerz podcast. It means a lot.
Thank you so much. Whenever George calls, I'll answer. Just let me know how I can be of support and ensure that more people know about this work that you're doing. because it's necessary and needed. So I appreciate the time and energy, and I'm excited to see what we're going to create together.